I love it. All right, Lab Coat agents, thanks for joining us today. We've got our co-host, Kevin Markarian, Dan in the background if you missed him. And today we have a special guest with us. He's a current CEO of Real Living and the former CEO of Realtor.com. And today we're going to be talking about exploring the science of real estate communication with Allan Dalton. Allan, thanks for being with us, buddy.
Thank you for having me, Tristan.
One of the most brilliant minds in real estate that I've ever met and talked to. So thank you for being on, man.
My pleasure.
So let's kick it right off. Kevin, you had a question for Allan.
Allan, thanks so much for being on. It's a great honor to talk with you and everything you've accomplished in your career and in the industry. What are you working on these days? What's your message to the real estate world nowadays?
Well, basically, let me just a little context for my comments. Years ago, I used to do some seminars, and I decided that I could never be a motivational speaker because I'd go around the country and I'd ask agents which coach or speakers had the greatest influence on your career, and I noticed that no one ever mentioned me. So I decided, I decided that instead of trying to be a motivational speaker, I decided to become the industry's first, foremost, and only demotivational speaker. So what I did, and one of the things I love about Lab Coat agents is because of the scholarship behind it. Socrates once said, a life unexamined is not worth living. And I've always believed a real estate career unexamined is not worth having. And so as I examined the real estate industry, it occurred to me that we don't really use the Socratic method of learning or the Socratic debate, that almost everybody is constantly being told what they should do as opposed to what they shouldn't be doing. So when I decided to become a demotivational speaker, I contacted my daughter, who at the time was a undergraduate at Princeton University studying psychology. Now she's a clinical psychologist. And I said, Ginny, do me a favor. I want to become a demotivational speaker. Could you do some research on the keys to demotivating people? So she called me about a week later and she said, Dad, there's 4 major ways to demotivate people from doing real estate transactions. And I said, what are they? So number 1, you want to make sure you embarrass people. Number 2, you want to make sure you belittle people, but if possible, belittle them in front of loved ones. Number 3, you want to manifest acute self-preoccupation. In other words, talk about yourself. And the 4th one was to try to get people to change how they think. And it occurred to me that our entire industry has based the way we communicate on these 4 principles of demotivation. And if you like, I'll give you some examples.
Yeah, I want some examples, please, because I'm already thinking of a couple, but I want you to tell me.
Well, let's start off with this one. What percentage of realtors in the industry do you think have ever used the word comps?
100%.
Okay,
Comps.
anytime somebody uses the word comps with a homeowner, it's like saying, folks, let's take a look at some comparable children to yours. In fact, I brought some pictures of other children in the neighborhood that are just like your children. Oh, come on, they've got 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes. And that basically embarrasses people and it belittles people. How do we know? Because every time an agent has ever said to a homeowner, let's take a look at some comps, or let's take a look at some similar homes, okay? Every homeowner who has ever lived responds in the same way. But Tristan, they don't have 5 bedrooms. But Tristan, they don't have our view. But Tristan, they don't have a new kitchen. When is our industry going to understand we're demotivating people? Another example of demotivation is that what percentage of the agents in our industry do you think still use the expression of the words listing presentation?
I do. So 100%.
100%. Now ask yourself this question. What percentage of homeowners want to hear a listing presentation? None. What do they want instead? A marketing proposal. And just like comps, instead of saying comps, what we should be saying is that, folks, let's take a look at properties that buyers will be evaluating at the same time they're evaluating your home. There's no reason that we have to insult, offend, humiliate, and embarrass people because we don't have the proper language. And it's the same thing. A listing presentation is about yourself, your company, and what you've done. A customized marketing proposal is about the home seller, their property, and what you are going to do. And this isn't just a matter of semantics. These distinctions carry with them profound consequences. We've all seen that plaque that reads, watch your thoughts, because your thoughts lead to your words lead to your actions lead to your character, your behavior, and your destiny. If somebody's even thinking, or they're listening to a trainer or a coach who's actually still in 2019 teaching them how to make a listing presentation, that's a dead on arrival. And the only way they'll get the listing is because other people aren't doing something superior to that. So we've got to change listing presentations to marketing proposal. Another thing we have to change is our entire approach to presenting pricing. We have to become more strategic. And the reason here's how we basically, as an industry right now, are trained to present pricing. Well, folks, I went into my computer, and here's my spreadsheet. This column here on the left, these would be homes on the market. That would be your competition. I'm saying this mockingly, by the way. This would be your competition. This column here is days on the market. This is listed sales price. Here are some expires. Here's absorption rates. That is the worst way in the world to ever engage a person because of pricing. Because in the information age, data and information have the lowest value. Knowledge and wisdom have the highest value. And we're becoming industry of data mongers, okay, that at the data level, because software companies have subsumed our intellects, and they're basically telling us how to engage consumers because we didn't do the scientific and the strategic thinking. What would be the strategic thinking? Asking simple questions. Tristan, what percentage of realtors you think when it comes to their own personal residence overprice their own home?
Oh.
100%. What percentage of realtors have access to all of the data?
Hopefully all of them.
All of them. What does that tell you about the value of the data? It's utterly worthless unless it's properly used, which I'm going to tell you how to do that. The next point is this. What percentage of homeowners have a price in mind before you arrive?
Oh, dude, almost all of them.
All of them. So therefore, we need to introduce price this way. First of all, when somebody begins their marketing presentation, they should begin by saying, folks, tonight I brought some pricing strategies along with some marketing strategies. Would you like to begin first with pricing and then get to marketing? Or would you prefer we begin with marketing and then get to pricing? Now, because people don't do that, and I don't mind sharing this because there's 1,300,000 realtors and 1,290,000 who are never going to hear this. And I honor your lab coat agents and you, Tristan, so I'll share this. But the point is this, when an agent actually begins a presentation by talking about themselves or saying and name things like, I want to help you get the best price in the shortest period of time with the least inconvenience, or I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and my company, then what we'll do to market your home. Okay, that causes homeowners to actually say, hey, can we just get to the price? Oh, hey, you don't have to sell us on yourself. Those are flawed atmospheric. So when you begin by saying, would you like to begin with pricing or marketing? You're giving them choice. They'll never interrupt you. You're in control. Now, let's say somebody says price. Instead of whipping out a stupid spreadsheet, do this, okay? Folks, we provide our clients with 3 different pricing strategies. Some of our clients want to price their property based on the data, a CMA, a market analysis. We can talk about that. And Tristan, by the way, I'm going to talk faster than normal, okay, just to not belabor this. The second strategy is that some of our clients want to price their property lower than the data. The less is more pricing strategy. And then some of our clients, they want to price their property a little higher. We call it the retail strategy because they think buyers are going to want to negotiate. Of these 3 different strategy, folks, which of the strategies seems to be more in line with your thinking? Now, at this point in time, the homeowners are only going to say, well, what are we talking about? What's the data? But what you've done is that you've tenderized. You have tenderized the home seller before you get to the data, because you've got to ask yourself this question. What percentage of consumers like the data? Try 0. Since they don't like the data, what does that make you? The bearer of bad news. What happens to the bearer of bad news? Shoot the messenger. So at the end of your presentation, your marketing proposal, when people are saying, Tristan, we really impressed, we're going to think about it, they're not thinking about your brochure. They don't have to mull over your testimonials. They're basically traumatized, not just with the price, but the way that it was handled. By having somebody say comms, by having somebody go through a spreadsheet, okay? Because the spreadsheet to them is flawed. Because the spreadsheet is comparing homes. And guess what? They don't think any of these homes compare. So it's absolutely flawed thinking.
Do you think, and this is a question for Kevin too, do you guys think that it's because the industry has a value proposition problem where they don't understand what value that is that they really have to offer?
Well, let's talk about the value proposition. See, our industry has an acute value proposition. We don't have an image problem because when it comes to image, we could not be in better shape as an industry. Why? We're prodigiously photoshopped. We're resplendently dressed. We've been writing our own reviews, and they're glowing for the past 50 years. So we were before ratings and reviews. We wrote our own. We invented personal promotion. And the parking lots around Westlake Village, where you are, Tristan, they're brimming with BMWs of realtors.
That's right.
So we don't have an image problem. What we have is a value problem. We have a value problem because too many consumers perceive a real estate transaction as a fee-inflated event, which they have to subsidize in order to promulgate an inefficiently run industry. Okay, so we have a challenge when it comes to our value, and I'm going to be getting to that, but staying with some of the ways we demotivate people. So we demotivate people on listening in terms of that. Now, a lot of this has to do with our industry having to be more strategic. For example, if I may not be right, but I'm convinced that you've got the most forward-thinking, scholarship vigilant realtors in America as part of your august network, a network that magnificently combines elements of social networking with social media. Sometimes the industry confuses and conflates social media and social marketing. Social marketing, take off the word, it's marketing. Social, it's networking. Social, it's media. You have a combination of social media and social networking. So you're providing both content and community and collegiality. And so you have an audience that's the most sophisticated. But that said, I would venture to say that if I were to ask your 90,000 plus members, how many of you had a strategy to enter real estate when you were in high school and college? Less than 1% would raise their hand. Now, if I had 90,000 doctors, you think more than 1% of doctors had a strategy in college to become a doctor? Or lawyers, or entertainers, or athletes, or police officers? So you have to understand that we're not the most strategic population. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It has to do with being more strategic. And I saw that when I was CEO of Realtor.com. And by the way, I had my own brokerage. I built the company from nothing with my partners, the 60 offices. We sold the company. Then I became the CEO of Realtor.com. I've done a lot. Mike Ferry dedicated this book to me years ago. I created national marketing systems for 5 brands. So I've been around the block, so to speak. And I must say, we do very few things strategically. For example, we still have brokers that when somebody comes into the business, they'll actually put an announcement that they just joined the industry. That's not a public announcement. That's a public warning. It's basically saying to the community, congratulations, you now have an opportunity to work with the least knowledgeable professional in the marketplace. Then we actually used to have companies putting on their windows listing needed. You don't go buy a restaurant, patrons needed. You don't go buy a hotel, guest needed. Thank God you don't have it at the cemetery. But the point is this, because it shows that we are not strategic in what we do. And one of the reasons that we're not strategic is because we haven't been introduced to enough strategic thought. Now I'm going to give you 4 or 5 of the most strategic thoughts that I've come across in my career that I'm going to encourage every single lab coat agent to mull over as you contemplate your own business. Here they are. The first most strategic comment I've come across in the last 30 years is from the dean of the Stanford Business School. When I was CEO of Realtor.com, on our board we had the person who funded Google, we had the person who's Mark Zuckerberg's mentor, We had the founder of WebMD. So they brought in the dean of Stanford for a 2-day conference.
Wow.
This was his conclusion about the real estate industry and everybody in it. Every single realtor, every real estate team, and every single real estate broker needs to ask themselves 2 questions. What do I do to create a positional advantage? And what do I do to create a capabilities advantage? A positional advantage, he likened to McDonald's. McDonald's has worldwide ubiquitous locations, immense brand equity. That's their positional advantage. That's their top of mind share. But if they don't develop a corresponding capabilities advantage, a more nutritional menu, a drive-through window, then their positional advantage recedes. So every realtor should be asking themselves, how strong is my positional advantage, top of mind share, sphere of influence? But it's not just having a sphere of influence, you've got to influence your sphere. Then the other thing is that in terms of capabilities advantage, in terms of capabilities advantage, what programs, what differentiation do I have? Because otherwise you will not develop supreme confidence. The second most strategic observation that I encourage everybody to entertain is this. It's from the dean of the Harvard Business School. The dean of the Harvard Business School says that every person in business should ask themselves these 2 questions. Number 1, what do I do that my competitors do, but that I do better? And number 2, what do I do that none of my competitors do? Okay? So as simple as that sounds, that's profoundly simple, and that should be a catalyst for deep introspection amongst your network. What do I do that my competitors do that I do better? What do I do that none of my competitors do? The third most strategic observation came from Confucius. Confucius said that all wisdom begins by properly naming things. Therefore, the way you name the company you're with, the brand that you're with, the name of your team, okay, that's very, very important, okay? And a great example of how we didn't heed that advice from Confucius has to do with the fact that what percentage of the realtors in America, Tristan, do you think still to this day actually refer to the person who represents the home seller as the listing agent? 100%. Now, do you think the listing agent, now why did we come up with the listing agent? Because in the mid-1800s, before there were realtors, before there was National Association of Realtors, homeowners used to get in their horse and buggy, go to the general store. So Bob Watson would get in his horse and buggy, go to the general store, and up in the wall there'd be a list, list your home for sale. So the homeowner was the de facto listing agent. A couple of 100 years later, 150 years later, we actually still use the language listing agent. I'm for one, I think realtors do more than just list a home. I don't know about you, Tristan. I think there's a lot more involved. Even a buyer agent sounds representational. A listing agent sounds like we're representing a piece of paper, an agreement. Now, you may think that, Alan, that's just semantics. That has profound implications and consequences. That's one of the reasons why about 25% of realtors self-define as I'm a realtor. You don't hear people say, hi, I'm a doctor. Hi, I'm an engineer. Hi, I'm an architect. But people will say I'm a realtor because the most important thing we do is represent a home seller, and we don't even refer to ourselves as marketing realtors. And then we wonder why people don't cherish our brand in what we do. So all wisdom begins by properly naming things. The fourth most strategic thing comes from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs said the biggest mistake that most businesses make is they focus on segmentation, niche marketing versus desegmentation. And all the realtors have been subsumed by third-party companies and software companies because they love the words hyperlocal. So everything they want to do is on zip codes and hyperlocal, and the realtors, because they're not strategic, have capitulated to that type of thinking. Realtors need to be much more geographically expansive. Now, one of the reasons why real estate agents in California make so much more money than agents on the Northeast is not because they're 10 times smarter, not because they're much more professional. It's because of the markets in terms of this. There are 71 municipalities in California with more than 100,000 people. There's 4 in New York State. There's 3 in New Jersey. There's 1 in Delaware. There's none in Vermont. There's none in New Hampshire. So you could be the #1 agent in Montpelier, Vermont, with a population of 8,600, and good luck to you.
Oh,
And so
wow.
because they don't have the addressable marketplace. I used to have realtors that thought going to 2 towns away, they acted like they were crossing the Himalayas. And so what you have to do is that you have to, instead of niche marketing, here's how niche marketing works. Somebody comes into the business and the broker says, well, put together your sphere of influence. Oh, I see that you belong to the Greek Orthodox Church. There's your niche. That agent's out of business in 2 years because it doesn't scale. Well, how about this one? I'm the condo king. Now that works for Allan Dalton in Philadelphia, but 99% of agents who say I'm the condo king, it never scales. There's 3 condominium buildings. Or I'm an equestrian specialist and there's 4 horse properties in the county, okay? Because they're basically engaged in niche marketing as opposed to identifying the largest swath of commonality and then going out there, sellers and buyers, in a vast expanse and going all out after them. And then the last thing, the most strategic, comes from Shakespeare. Shakespeare said, actions must suit the words and words must suit the actions, okay? Now, it all comes down to words. For example, when I was CEO of Realtor.com in the early days, only 11% of people back then were enhancing their listings. And yet, if you were to go to them and say, if you were a homeowner, would you want to enhance your listing enhanced? And they say yes. So that to me was almost like a violation of agency and ethics, because the classic definition of agency is you and your client are as one. So if you're a doctor and you use an MRI, why wouldn't you provide that with your patients? So an agent, they'd want to have multiple photos in their home, but they wouldn't extend it to their client, to their consumer. But this was the #1 reason why they said they didn't do it. Get a load of this one. Because my listings, listen to the word listings, because my listings are selling anyway. Because they don't make a difference between marketing and listing and marketing and selling. And that brings me back to the other topics like for sale by owners and expires, for example. We have been assaulting for sale by owners for the last 100 years. And that's one of the reasons why so many consumers are disgusted with our industry, according to the Harris poll. Because here's how agents actually would call a for sale by owner. They go like this. So they'd meet a for sale by owner and they'd actually ask a question like this. Have you had many offers? That's like going into a restaurant where no one's eating and saying, hey, you always this busy here? Consumers aren't stupid. They basically know you're trying to disarm them and weaken them. And what it compels the for sale by owner to do is to have to lie. Oh yeah, we've had a lot of activity. And because they have to lie, now they're less likely to list with that agent because they have to validate that lie. It's the same thing. We're in an industry that some people over the years have actually asked people to sign in at open houses. What percentage of people want to sign in at open houses? None.
Hold on.
Good.
Allan, you made a great point that I had never even thought of that. So check this out, Allan and Kevin. When you brought up the fact that we're approaching the for sale by owners with stupid questions that force them to have to lie to us, all of a sudden, instead of us approaching it in an authentic way, we're not. And they then, in turn, are not being authentic to us.
Exactly. It's like the principle of adverse principality, you know. But here's the other point. But language, my dear friends on this network call, language is the clothing of ideas. So you have to go to the root of the ideas. The reason why we would talk to for sale by owners that way is because we've never properly amplified the difference between selling a home and marketing a home. See, they're FISBOs, they're not FIMBOs. They're not for marketing by owners. We're FIMBOs, we're for marketing by agents, that's what I say. And so if we understood the difference between selling and marketing, we'd concede selling in order to gain marketing. So we'd say to a for sale by owner, for example, Tristan, if all you want to do is sell your home, you don't need me because you can sell your own home. Would you agree with that? Exactly. Yeah. But what I can help you with is market your home. You see, Tristan, when you sell a home, you sell it to a buyer. When we market a home, we get it sold to the right buyer. I don't want to just sell your home. I want to create competition. If for your home. So again, they don't expect to hear that, and it's more truthful, and it's disarming. So we don't have to resort to belittling tactics and humiliation tactics, like saying to somebody, well, if you've got to be careful about strangers in the home. Those are scare tactics. Never mind the fact that 95% of all the bad things that happen in the home are because of loved ones and family members. So they're safer with strangers to begin with, okay? and so our industry has basically, because we have been utterly misguided for decades, because we never made a distinction between selling a home and marketing a home. And when a for sale by owner came, we actually thought they were in competition with us because they're trying to sell the home. That's what we do. That's not what we do. And we weren't even clever enough to be able to juxtapose the difference, give up selling. Okay, If all you want to do is sell your home, you don't need me. Just like if you wanted to sell a Super Bowl ticket, you could sell a Super Bowl ticket for $500, but we may be able to market it for $2,000. Now, there's not going to be that much of a differential, but the last thing in the world you ever want to do is try to sell your home, Tristan. Do you know why? Because you might end up selling it. That's the last thing you want to do is sell your home. Because when you sell a home, you sell it to a buyer. When we market a home, we get it sold to the right buyer. Okay? Why would you not want to expose your property on Broadway? Why would you go off Broadway? You're big time. This home's amazing. What percentage of the market do you want to deny the opportunity to bid on this? Now, let's talk about expired listings. We have a major problem with expired listings because we've been trained by every trainer and coach over the past 50 years in the wrong way. Because they've actually trained realtors to think that homes don't sell because of price. That's wrong thinking. There's only one reason why a home doesn't sell, and that's because of ineffective marketing, because price is part of marketing. Marketing is not part of price. See, in the 1950s, the Harvard Business School came out with the 4 P's of marketing, okay? Price, product, placement, and promotion, okay? And so because they came out with price, that was a revelation for the rest of the world, but for the real estate industry, we said, hey, let's jettison 75% of the P's. All we want to focus on is price. And so it goes like this. Here's the debate the industry's been having. I'll say to you, Tristan, I think the home didn't sell because it was ineffectively marketed. Well, Allan, even if there was horrible marketing, if you lower the price enough, somebody will buy it. No, Tristan, I think the home didn't sell because there was horrible negotiating. Allan, even if you get the worst negotiator in the world, if you lower the price, somebody's going to buy it.
Somebody's going to buy the damn thing.
Tristan, I think the home didn't sell because there wasn't adequate staging. Allan, doesn't matter. Even if there's no staging, if you lower the price enough, somebody will buy it. Allan, you could have 5 dead bodies in the basement, but if you lower the price enough, somebody will buy it. And so what we have basically hid behind is for the past 100 years, it's been collectively convenient that there's never been a home in America or North America in the world that didn't sell that was our fault. It was all because the homeowner didn't capitulate to our infallible pricing wisdom, okay? So every single failure is them. So let's keep throwing the homeowner under the bus, because I've never heard realtors walk around my offices. I have 32 that I own. I've never had realtors walk around saying, the homes aren't selling because I'm doing a horrible job of marketing. Do you hear that a lot, Tristan? No,
I never hear them.
It's overpriced. It's overpriced. It's overpriced. Okay? It's like a Gregorian chant. That's why we haven't evolved. No, there's only one reason the home doesn't sell. It's ineffective marketing. But again, price is part of marketing.
Yeah.
So it's the whole part.
Allan, we have quite a few people on, and a lot of them are asking questions. And speaking of marketing and the way the industry's headed with regards to data, and obviously there's a lot happening. So I'm going to just kind of jump right in. You're obviously a very prominent person in our industry, being the former Realtor.com CEO and now with your new company. 2 things. One, how do you see the industry headed with regards to data, right? I mean, with all the competition out there, the people trying to take over, the perception that companies are trying to take over the real estate agent's position. And secondly, obviously with the latest news with Realtor.com, and there's a lot happening with Realtor.com recently with the CEO leaving, and also with Opcity, the purchase with Opcity. I know that everyone on this call are super eager to hear what you have to say about that. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing your thoughts on those things.
Well, first of all, in terms of Realtor.com, because I was their CEO for several years, I just want everybody on the lab code network to tell that I told my colleague that if I have any calls from the board of directors asking me to take over, not to interrupt this network with the lab code agent. So I just want everyone to know I'm not going to be leaving this webinar to take that position. Okay.
I love it, dude.
Okay. Actually, a testament to how resilient Realtor.com is that they survived my tenure. Okay. They could survive a guy like me being at the helm. We don't have to worry about them. No, they've increased their viewership 7%. They've done a great job. The former now CEO did a fantastic job. They've got a replacement person now who is their president of digital services. So you know there's going to be a great emphasis on digital and mobile and so forth and so on. But I want to go back to the question of the world that we're living in terms of data. Here's the way that I look at it, okay? A few things. Number one, and by the way, are you going to post my email address if anyone wants? I'm going to send some of this, what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, let me grab it right now.
Why don't you do that right now? Okay.
All right.
All right, so my role, first of all, is I have the high pleasure of being both the CEO of Real Living, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Research and Development for Berkshire Hathaway Home Services and Real Living. So I give a lot of thought to all of this. And basically, there's a few shifts that we have to look to make. Number one, we have to become an industry that evolves from seeing itself as part of the service sector to members of the skill sector. See, we're charging consumers surgeon-like fees, but we're too often trying to validate our results, validate our fees either just on results on the great service that we give. Now, the providing of data is a service. The manifestation of knowledge and wisdom is a skill. But if we remain in the service sector, every service can be replicated and duplicated, and the consumer will expect these advanced technologies to downstream to them in terms of greater efficiencies and thus savings, okay? And so what we have to do is that what's happened in the industry is this. 20 years ago, people were worried about the word disintermediation, the elimination of the middle person, as what happened with the travel industry, okay, with Experian and the like, okay? But we were not disintermediated on the listing side, but we were disrupted. We were disrupted on the buying side because now 95% of consumers begin their home search with third-party portals or through the internet, as opposed to call-ins, walk-ins, for sale signs, open houses. But that buying side disruption was not onerous. It allowed brokers to reduce their classified advertising expenditure. It allowed real estate teams to form because now listing rainmakers could now control the destiny of their leads and thus hire a few buyer agents. Okay, and I think real estate teams there's nothing more, I don't think anything has contributed to higher career development of agents than real estate teams, because as real estate companies began to consolidate and you had offices, 25 years ago, the average real estate office in America had 9 agents. Now when you have offices through consolidation with 50, 100, 150 agents, that broker or the manager no longer has the time and the time efficiency to create an intimate career development relationship with 150 people. And so fortunately for our precious agents who deserve career guidance and inculcation, real estate teams have been able to step in to do that. But real estate teams would have been less successful if it wasn't for buying side disruption, because buying side disruption allowed them to control and pay for leads and to end up with search going to their listing detail page. Now, the only way that third-party portals and new entrants, or what I would even refer to as cyberspace carpetbaggers, the only way they have a chance to monetize or further monetize these portals is to disrupt the listing side. But that's going to be much more onerous because the buyer doesn't determine the fee, and buyers don't generate listings as much as listings generate buyers. So what we're going to see now, as we're beginning to see with iBuy campaigns and Home Light and so forth and so on, the first massive, with billions of dollars backing it, to go over and to create relationships with the seller, because as of now, 74% of all home sellers select somebody they know. The challenge is going to be is that as an industry, if we continue to allow the consumers to view the internet as like the emergency waiting room, where see people will go to WebMD, but that will be to buttress their relationship with their family or their personal physician. We don't have, see people right now, consumers have one doctor, one dentist, one lawyer, one financial planner, and even one auto mechanic, okay, as my good friend Rusty Wolf says in Atlanta, but they have 10 or 15 or 5 or 6 realtors. So we have to put an end to this Russian real estate roulette and this random search. Now, in order to do that, we're going to have to make a transformation that occurred in other industries. For example, in the insurance industry, they went through this notable metamorphosis that began, for example, 100 years ago, if you were selling insurance, you weren't selling life insurance then. You first sold burial insurance. Then they evolved to selling death insurance because there was more expense surrounding a death than a burial. Then for 25 years, they sold something called death insurance. And then some positive spinmeister on Madison Ave said it would sound a little bit more cheerful and optimistic. And instead of being in the death insurance industry, why don't we sell life insurance, okay? But then something else, and they also changed the way they communicate. They evolved their language. For example, I've seen their old training manuals. If you said to a life insurance agent 50 years ago, well, how many years do we have to pay for the premium? Their answer was maybe only 1. If you said to a life insurance agent 50 years ago, what do I need with $1 million policy? My wife's just going to remarry anyway. They'd say, what would a widow with $1 million policy possibly want with another husband? So they changed. They became more sophisticated. They became more evolved. And what are they today? They're all financial planners. Going forward, there's not enough perceived value in the transaction, especially if the transaction becomes more commoditized, especially with things like iBuyer and the like. Therefore, agents have to now evolve to creating clients for life. So what I've done for Berkshire Hathaway Home Services and Real Living, and I don't mind mentioning this because these programs are tied to them, and you've got many phenomenal brands on this company, so I'm not trying to solicit anybody, but this is the only way that I can illustrate this. So what I did with the team for Real Living, I created the Lifestyle Planning Guide. It's a 20-something page, often online guide, because I asked myself this question: what percentage of consumers at some time in their life regret not owning enough real estate? Almost everybody. What percentage have developed a real estate plan for life? 0. What have we done as an industry? Instead of helping them plan and put guides as a lifetime agent, we're sending them pumpkins, refrigerated medics, carrot, all of this like that. In fact, I had somebody come up to me a few months ago and said, Mr. Dalton, I'm no longer on the park benches. I said, why not? He said, because I went home to dinner and my 12-year-old daughter was weeping. And I said, honey, what is it? And she said, Daddy, all my friends at school think you're missing. Okay? So in other words, what we have to do, we have to go from personal promotion and trinkets to relevance. But you have to have a plan. See, what we have right now is agents for years have been proclaiming, I'd like to be your agent for life, but there's no plan for life. So we have to now mimic what the insurance agents industry had to do to become financial planners. And so Berkshire Hathaway Home Services is gifted with the brand that suggests real estate trusted advisor, and Real Living, as small as we are right now, is lifestyle advisor. So we've created programs. And by the way, and the reason I don't mind sharing this is because no one will do what we're doing, but if you do a version of it, that will help the whole industry. Because if only John Hancock evolved to financial planning, but not Metropolitan and Prudential and all these other companies, that whole profession would have been in trouble. As an industry, and that's why Chris Stewart, the amazing CEO of Home Services, along with Gino Blafari, the incomparable CEO of Home Services, they have worked, and this is Chris's vision, to have what is known as a forever agent. So Berkshire Hathaway owns the space of, we want to be a forever agent, we're the forever brand. So I'm hoping that the whole industry of full-time professional realtors will mimic from going from transactional to relational in terms of that.
Allan, where does that start though? Because so many agents, I mean, there's a big division. We see it, Kevin, in your group, Real Closers and in Lab Coat Agents, and even in the industry, Allan, we see such a huge division as to people's approach or agents' approach to real estate, we see a lot of them just want to go for the close, what we call hardcore closing, versus what Berkshire and Real Living are trying to do, and that's create a client for life. Where does that start in the world of a real estate agent? How do we change our industry to actually look at it that way?
Well, it starts off with a mindset, for example, that if it starts with an understanding that no one right now owns the buyers unless they're paying for them. Okay? No one's going to, but what we've had is that even if a person wasn't paying sites for leads and referrals, if they were prodigious in their community as a listing agent, people would come to open houses, contact them, go through IDX listing detail pages. But now I think what you're going to have, so in other words, if real estate agents, when I was CEO of Realtor.com, for example, 98% of the visitors to our site clicked on find a home, and only 2% clicked on find a realtor, and they were realtors. So there's an old expression: if you knew how little other people were thinking about you, you'd worry less what they thought. The consumers are not thinking about us. In other words, if we can all understand that the first loyalty that buyers have is to get the information, then we'll understand that there'll be a mass attempt to have the home sellers go to people other than their local realtor first. Because these sites and these initiatives are going to take a more algorithmic approach to engaging homeowners. For example, we still, as I said earlier, we still have agents. If somebody says, how's the market? They'll say it's unbelievable. But if a consumer goes to Google and put, how's the market in Westlake Village? The first response is, and it's unbelievable. And so in other words, and so these third-party sites, they'll entice the homeowner based on rebates, commission, lower commissions, and ratings and review, which are completely dubious, okay? And it's tough for anybody to completely control that. So the whole essence has to be that realtors now have to mimic the behavior, for example, of also politicians. For example, 95% of Congress people historically get reelected. Even though people hate Congress in general, they have a relationship with their local congressperson. People don't love realtors in general, but they love their local realtor. But that local realtor is not going, as much as they love that local realtor, they're going to love rebates, lower commissions, okay, even more. And what they're going to do is they're going to go to the internet. And now when buyers went to the internet, they shop for property. Sellers are going to go to the internet to shop for agents. And that's why what we have to do is use our knowledge and wisdom and become more relevant. For example, for Real Living, I did this. Did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. I have a quick question because you mentioned something that buyers, you said something about data and buyers wanting data, and they're going to IDX, they're going to these sites, and then their sites are selling leads back to us. There's companies out there and people out there talking about taking that data, like listing data, for example. I mean, there are companies out there that are holding on to that data and not putting it out for the IDXs to have access. What do you think about that? I mean, is that a way for, because, right, I mean, if the idea is that the portals and these companies are competing against agents and they're now getting into the commission space, is the response by the industry in order to maintain relevancy with agents, is the response to take that data off of the IDX, and like some of the companies out there are holding on to that listing inventory and sharing it internally?
Okay, let's look at it this way. So obviously Realtor.com, Zillow aggregated data. We had 848 MLSs giving us the feed. So now let's say that somebody comes in and says, we're not going to cooperate with that. Okay, we're not going to fund these third-party portals with our data. That still doesn't change the fact that now, even if there might not be 2 or 3 mega sites, still with the search results, anybody can still going to be able to go in to Westlake Village or Boston, and on the first page, find access to basically all of the. So it may take them 3 or 4 more minutes. So that's not going to disrupt the listing of the selling side. And I could go on for hours on the subject, but we don't have time. But I'm more talking about the disruption on the listing side, because see, you're still talking about home data more than commission data, rebate data. Okay, so once the homeowner starts the thing, in the same way we go to Craigslist, okay, in fact, I created a website called townadvisor.com because people go to the Home Advisor for home improvement, they go to Town Advisor for hotel information, okay, and the more that people say that there's like, say, realestatecommissions.com or whatever, the more, see, what's always been amazing to me, we all know commissions are negotiable, and we can't ever say what one fee is, but what's always amazed me is how many homeowners in the entire country, no matter what state they were in, and no matter what price range they were in, all basically ended up being willing to pay a fee that was almost the same, almost the whole country. I think that's going to be challenged, but one way that we have to respond to the challenge is to sell based on our skill versus our service. For example, if I were to say to you, what's your fee? Now, let's say, as an example, let's say, I'll just pick a number. Let's say you said it was 6%. And if I said, well, the other company said they do 4%. Now, what should an agent say? There's a number of things you can say. Now, the stupid thing, some realtors say, well, you get what you pay for. But that doesn't cut it, because I'm not going to go into a car dealership and say, what's the most anybody's ever paid for this car? I want to get what I pay for. All right. And so now let's say somebody says, because I give better service. Well, I'd say, well, Tristan, you give better service. Well, I've got $1 million home. What's your fee? It's 6%. Well, my son, I don't have one, but my son has a $100,000 home. What's your fee? 6%. Why is it 6%? Because I give great service. Well, Tristan, will you be giving my son the same great service that you're giving me? Well, yes. Why do I have to pay 10 times as much for the same great service? Does everything does everything cost exactly 10 times as much? The for sale signs, the open house, the ads, the featured homes? Why am I paying 10 times as much? You can't validate in your own mind that, but that's why you can say this. Here's why. Because, Tristan, my negotiating skills alone are worth at least 1 point. That's worth $10,000 to you. It's $1,000 to your son. My staging expertise skill is worth at least 1 point. So you can only justify math with math. We've been taking these very ethereal, ridiculous, sophomoric responses for the last 50 years. Yeah. And a lot of times these don't even come up. But my thinking is always this. The best way to get listings, you've got to be supremely confident. You've got to feel that, by the way, for 20 years, I went on 2 or 3 listing calls a day for 20 years with my 32 offices, because that's how I was compensated. I didn't charge a referral fee, but my partner saw me as a listing presentation weapon. I was basically a Hessian, a mercenary. The homeowners never saw me again, but I probably have made more marketing presentations than anybody in the history of this industry, okay? And so what I'm saying is that, so over time you hear every single objection. So for example, if somebody said, well, gee, the other company said they'd do it for 4%, I'd say, Tristan, with all due respect, knowing their marketing, I'm a little surprised they're trying to charge that much. They're a listing company, we're a marketing company. But getting back to the skills, if you believe that you were so skillful that it was impossible for somebody not to list their home with you, you'd invest more in your career. One of my top agents in New Jersey, she told me, saw a few months ago, I said, what did you make last year? She said, I made $1,300,000. I said, how did you do it? She goes, I send out 16,000 postcards a month. From the 16,000 postcards, with my deal with the post office that cost me $140,000, I grossed $870,000 last year. Now, by the way, if you go to an Inman conference, who's great, a Stephen Swampel, who's great, and if you go up and down the exhibit aisles and the people go up there like with the little trick-or-treating ritual with the little Halloween bags going by every booth, okay, you're not going to hear anybody saying you should be sending out a lot more postcards, okay, because that's not avant-garde. But the point is this, but she wouldn't send out 16,000 postcards if she wasn't supremely confident that she'd get every listing from every lead. That's why you've got to have an immense understanding. For example, if I were to say to everybody on this network call, explain to me how real estate marketing works. If you have 90,000 members, there'd be 90,000 answers. But a lot of them aren't concise. A lot of them aren't really as intelligent as they need to be. Let me give you the answer. Allan, so if somebody says, if I said, you want to begin with pricing first or then go to marketing? Or do you want to start with marketing and then go to price. If somebody says, why don't we begin with marketing? I'm going to say, Tristan, all marketing in real estate comes down to 3 words: range, reach, and influence. Range is the internet. Reach is IDX. I'll explain to you how that works. But we don't have to worry about range and reach anymore, because if I have the privilege of representing you, every company, RE/MAX, Keller Williams, Sotheby's, all of them are going to have your information and your property on their site. I'm so happy for you, because 20 years ago, you'd actually be asking me about exposure. Now you no longer have to worry about exposure. We can check that up. I'm so happy for you. If somebody's having breakfast in Brussels, they'll see multi photos of your home, whether it be on our site or Sotheby's or Keller Williams. I'm so happy for you folks. Isn't this exciting? But now, so we don't have to worry about range and reach. What we have to worry about is influence. We have to influence buyers and buyer agents to want to not only buy the home, but pay for the most amount of money. Okay? So that's how real estate works. Now, what you're doing in that, you're eliminating all of your competition by including them, because your competition is all part of the syndication of range and reach. Now, that's clear. That shows that you have a critical mind, you're a critical thinker, and you're giving clarity to how everything works. It's the same thing with pricing. There's 3 approaches. You're taking advantage of Norse mythology, the power of 3s. And that's what we have to do. And then we have to still purge some of our language. We've got to change some of our attitudes as well. We're in an industry, and I'm talking very fast, deliberately here. We also have an industry that almost thinks they have to bribe other agents to go to their open houses with food. Imagine being in the hospital, Tristan, laying in the hospital bed, and overhearing your doctor say to another doctor, could you please come up and see my patient? I'll have a buffet here for you. Okay? We should be inspecting inventory. We should be inspecting inventory, because that's our professional responsibility to evolve our knowledge and wisdom to better serve our clients. Okay? And so there's so many changes like that we have to make it, just in terms of how we're positioning ourselves. But going back to that question, data, it's all knowledge and wisdom. It's creating clients for life, because otherwise we always are going to think that we're at the whims of technology and search and SEO. That's not the world that doctors live in. That's not the world that financial planners live in anywhere near as much as we do, okay? And those are the changes. And by the way, and I'm happy if we do that, because the people who have the most gravitas, you deserve to have the most clients. You're investing in your career. You're on lab coat agents, okay? You've got to basically squeeze out, okay, all the people who aren't even in the business. You've got to squeeze out agents who, when they go to a social function and somebody says, John, what do you do? And John says, well, I'm in real estate, but I used to be a teacher. I'm in real estate, but I used to work for UPS. It's like somebody saying, I'd like you to meet my wife, Alice, and here's my ex-wife, Betty. These are people who shouldn't even be in the business. You've got to squeeze them out by converting customers into clients for life and becoming more relational. And that will also ameliorate all of the pressure, the downward pressure and compression of fees. Okay, and then another thing, maybe you'll have me back, I'll go over the ultimate way to make a marketing presentation.
Yeah, I'd like to.
And to close buyers, and to do personal promotion the right way. One thing on personal promotion, maybe 20% of the industry's agents actually have on the back of their business card, the sincerest compliment somebody can pay me is to send me a referral to their friends and their family. Consumers aren't going to consumer educational seminars on how they can pay us not only compliments, but sincere compliments, because obviously we seem to be in a duplicitous profession that we have to distinguish between compliments and sincere compliments, because supposedly we must be giving a lot of people insincere compliments, so we only want sincere compliments. And what we should do instead is have this in the back of the business cards. My highest professional privilege is to serve the needs of your family and friends. I love referrals. It all has to be about them. It all has to be about the consumer.
Yeah, I think that goes along with what you were talking about when we were talking about for sale by owners, the authentic approach, right? Because as soon as you start becoming inauthentic, either in your marketing or in the words that you're using, you're just opening up the door for them to treat you the same way. So really good point, Allan. There's a question by Alvin Tapia. He says, can you share an authentic question to a for sale by owner?
No, a couple of authentic questions to a for sale by owner is this, okay? Do you believe that you as an individual can outperform 10,000 agents in our marketplace who invest hundreds of millions of dollars to attract buyers, okay, in terms of getting your property? So that would be one question, just to have them in terms of that. The other question is this: what segment of the market do you not want to have access to your house? Now, there's other stuff of FSBOs that can come in later that have been around for years. For example, what do you, and this is language many years ago, my good friend in Michigan, Jerry Bresser, introduced to the industry, which I've always loved. Tristan, let me ask you this. What do you see as your single greatest advantage in trying to sell your home on your own? Well, to save the commission, Allan.
Yep.
Great. What do you think the buyer sees as his or her single greatest advantage?
Yeah, I guess it's the same
To
thing.
save the same commission. Unfortunately, you both can't save it. And the problem that we see is that, Tristan, you might be willing to share, but the buyer isn't. The buyer sees it as that you're struggling and you're desperate to sell. Because why else would you be dealing directly with the public? Okay. Not only that, a lot of people will say to for sale by owners, you got to be careful of strangers. A lot of strangers think they've got to be careful of for sale by owners. They want the protection. And not only that, and you're not going to have corporate transferees coming into the Four Seasons circling for sale by owner ads or going to for sale by owner sites. And so the whole point is this. Do you understand the difference between selling a home and marketing a home? Well, let me explain. When you sell a home, you sell it to a buyer. When we market a home, we get it sold to the right buyer. I don't want to just sell your home. I want to help you create competition for your home. And then you can get into the negotiation. You should say you can't negotiate because they can. But you'll have to negotiate differently. For example, if somebody shows interest and you follow up on them, what do you think it automatically does to your home's price? It lowers it. It's because it's seen as though you have to. You're desperate. That's why when it comes to open houses, I have two different responses to home sellers. If I don't want to have an open house, I'll say to a home seller, I don't want to have open houses right away for this reason. Because you think buyers think that people want to have them. No. So why do you think they can think you have them? Because you have to sell. I want to be able to characterize you almost as a reluctant seller because people want what they can't have. Now, here's the reason for a open house. Tristan, the reason I want to have an open house is that you own a contemporary here in town.
Yeah.
And a lot of buyers will come to our offices and they say they only want a colonial or they only want a ranch, okay? And so what happens is that buyer agent, therefore, doesn't bring their clients. I want to advertise your property in a certain way, a home for all seasons and all reasons. I want to put back pressure on the buyer agents to let them know that if they don't bring their well-qualified clients to see the property, their buyers are going to come on their own to the open house, and they're going to lose their clients. So I want to create back pressure. I want to create back pressure on the market in terms of that. Now, the other reason I like to do an open house is, Tristan, I asked you at the beginning, why do you think somebody should want to buy your home? We went through those forms.
Mm-hmm.
And then I asked you another question. Is there anything about your property that you think a buyer agent will try to negate to bring the price down that we should strategize over this evening? Now, after I go through that type of stuff, I'm going to say, by the way, the reason I like to have open houses is because at the open house, that gives me the best chance to speak directly to the buyer, okay? Because the buyer agent has a fiduciary responsibility for your home to sell as least as it possibly can sell for. So I don't want to leave. See, for example, I want to make sure that I'm the person involved. That's why I also have a program called Cooperative Showing Suggestions that I send emails to the buyer agents because you and I will put together showing strategies because we can't afford to have buyer agents come into your beautiful home, opening up the closet door and saying, oh, I think this is the family room. We can't allow that to happen, Tristan. See, real estate agents in California are trained on how to show homes in general, but there's no training programs on individual homes. You and I have to put together a training program on this home that we can email to people. And they love that. They love that whole approach in terms of that.
All right, I agree. Two questions for you, Allan.
Yeah.
One of them is from Ryan Lally. He brings up a good point. I wanted to see what you thought on this. When you were talking about on the back side of the business card about referrals, asking for referrals, he says, isn't that a call to action though? And doesn't every marketing message need a call to action?
Well, I said have a call to action, but I said have this. My highest privilege is to serve my highest professional privilege is to serve the needs of your friends and family, ... I love referrals. Okay. But what I'm saying is that it basically shows that your spirit of intent. In other words, one great thing to do about personal promotion is this. Okay. As a top producer, when you go on a listing call, a marketing presentation, anytime you brag about yourself, you should say one of two things. Okay. If you say last year I did $50 million of real estate, you should follow it by saying this. Although I know that means nothing to you, Tristan, unless I get you the best results. So you've got to have that in tandem, because otherwise it sounds as though you're self-celebratory, okay? And basically there's another notch on my gun holder, okay? In terms of the other thing you should focus on is this. Almost the entire industry focuses on how we sell more homes. The whole focus has to be how we sell homes for more. The other thing is that when you're doing personal promotion, anytime you brag about yourself, you should put down the bottom, because my clients deserve the very best. Because otherwise, it looks as though you're taking a self-serving statistical relationship to what you do, and it's not client-centric enough.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense, Alan. Another question by Regis Ferrand. What do you guys think are the biggest fears and frustration of today's established, successful real estate agency business owners with all the tech-savvy companies jumping in the market, as well as the low-cost commissions?
Well, those were articulated within the body of the question. What are the biggest concerns? And I would agree with that. But in terms of the lower commissions, one thing that I think is going to help us is some of these iBuy platforms, Tristan.
Yeah.
Their servicing fee is like 7, 8, or 9%.
Yeah.
So that could be used as leverage by realtors, saying, by the way, there's one thing that somebody will come in and just buy your home, and there's an 8% fee for that, or we can create more competition and it's only a 6%. Okay. So ironically, the introduction of somebody coming in, buying properties and treating the real estate asset class as the commodity class could ultimately help us, because you've got scientific research saying that we need to charge 7 or 8 or 9%. And then that's juxtaposed against the fact that we only pay 5 or 6%. And by the way, speaking of compensation, I used to always say this to home sellers when they'd ask me for the fee. Very few would, because they were mesmerized by all that I do with them, which I don't have time to get into. But if they ever did, of these hundreds and hundreds of appointments, bring up the fee, I would always say, something I'd always say is this: Tristan, by the way, my fee is 6%, but I want to make a commitment to you tonight. I also want to make a promise to you that after I get you the results, and I know you're going to want to give me an additional bonus, that I'm not going to accept it, just so you know. Then I'd move on. Okay. But anyway, so in other words, so the fears of commission, of technology. Do you think doctors and lawyers are as fearful as technology as we are? They're not. Do you think financial planners, because we have to get out of seeing ourselves as transactional. Okay, we're not transactional. We're relational. See, one of the reasons why there's two big reasons why we still have a viable industry. Number one, because we do a fantastic job of overpricing our listings. Because if listings weren't overpriced and they were priced to sell, meaning that they sold right away, what homeowner in their right mind is going to pay $50,000 for $1 million home that on average takes a week to sell? It's not going to happen. The reason why we get paid handsomely is because we need to take weeks and sometimes months to nurture the delusions of the home seller and cajole the buyers to come up. Billions of dollars are transacted in a nanosecond. And if you sold $1 million worth of stock, if you work for E-Trade, your commission would be $12. How many of you on this call would accept a $12 commission okay, to sell $1 million home? I don't think so. Why don't you have to? Because real estate's not a commodity and it's not a stock. Real estate represents a protracted lifestyle, comprehensive, complicated decision-making process that along the anatomy and continuum of the sale, you have to introduce your knowledge, your wisdom, and your skill. Okay, and then the transaction has to be an extension of your advice. And so then if people are going to the internet, you're like the family doctor or the lawyer, they're just bringing some of their research to you. That's data that you can refine their search based on your knowledge and wisdom. But it all begins, but if somebody's thinking that they're a listing agent, and I don't even need to market because my listings are selling anyway, and if we're still saying these ridiculous things, like some agents will still actually say to a home seller when they present the first offer, well, Tristan, oftentimes the first offer is the best offer. Every consumer who's ever lived hates to hear that because it looks as though they're being manipulated. Because we're less likely to say, well, oftentimes the first offer is the worst offer. Who are we kidding? And that's the whole idea with that. And so we have to be able to be much more skillful in our communication and at least do a better job. I wouldn't subscribe to this personally, but at least do a better job of at least pretending that all we care about is their interest. See, there's a conflict here. Homeowners want to get their home sold for the best price. Realtors want to make a sale. That's an inherent conflict. The standing you take depends on where you sit. We want a sale. They want the best price. That's been a conflict that's existed for 100 years, and a lot of realtors aren't even prepared to be able to verse that by communicating in a sense. Okay, so they should say, for example, during their marketing presentation, oh, by the way, ethically and legally, I need to present all offers. Now, sometimes the first offer might be the best offer, but many times it's the worst offer, but I'll know and we'll discuss it. Then when you have that offer, and you say, by the way, remember I told you this? Now they trust you. And here's another thing about trust. We have to make the distinction between somebody trusting a realtor versus somebody trusting their advice. If you go on an airplane, the pilot might lie about his personal life. You may not trust the pilot personally, but you better trust him professionally. And when you get on the airplane, there's going to be some people in the skill sector and others in the service sector. I want the pilot to be in the skill sector. I want the flight attendants to be in the service sector. We have to evolve. We have to join the skill sector all out. We have to go from customers and consumers to clients. We have to have a relationship in terms of that. And we have to become much more advanced in explaining and articulating our value. Many realtors will say this incessantly. I don't think that consumers really appreciate all that we do. The reason that they don't is the way we explain it, the way we position it. We'll have to wait till the cows come home to any person on this earth respect somebody called the listing agent. It's a joke. Let's give it up. Okay? That's, it's like Elsa said in that Cinderella movie, let it go, let it go. That's what we have to do here.
Oh, yeah. That was Frozen. Yeah.
Frozen, rather. My granddaughter loved that. Let it go, let it go. Let's let go 95% of the things we've been told to say because we're speaking to a consumer who no longer exists.
Agreed, man. That's the key. That's what I've been telling people all day long. It's just like people are still using words that just don't apply to the world that we live in anymore.
One last thing I would like to say here. Here's what we're doing. If anybody would like to know about what we're doing at Real Living, if I may have this privilege to just say, okay. We're shifting a major focus to try to bring in some of the top teams in the country because a lot of real estate team leaders, they may still be experiencing some conflict within their brokerage because sometimes that's a tough thing to navigate. And some people might want to go from being a real estate team leader to a broker owner backed by Warren Buffett, HSF, Home Service of America. Not that Warren Buffett is personally, obviously, but we're all tied up to Home Service of America. We're a Berkshire Hathaway company, and they need assistance in terms of business practices, site selection, lease understanding. And then what's happening in a lot of teams is people who are on the team want to leave and start their own teams. And so a lot of times what can happen is that team leader can bring in team leadership principles because there's no doubt about it. People leading teams, in my opinion, and I don't care how many brokers are on this call, team leaders, in my opinion, are much more progressive and in tune with what's happening in the marketplace than most people running brokerages. And we need to have their advanced understanding of the changing dynamics influencing more people. And I'd love to see them become broker owners, develop an asset that they can sell someday. And that's something else that if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to send information. And a lot of the thing I'm happy to send out is this, talking about communication. Our industry basically has settled on only 6 words. Every home that we advertise is either beautiful, lovely, spacious, gracious, okay, magnificent, whatever. We have 5 or 6 words to describe all homes.
Yeah.
We only have 2 expressions to describe all properties. Your property is either professionally landscaped. Ever hear that one? Professional
All the
landscape.
time.
That one, Tristan? Have you ever heard this one? Park-like setting. Have you ever heard that one, buddy? Okay. So the whole industry has basically defaulted to 2 descriptions, and that doesn't reflect a deep understanding, a nuanced mind at work, and it sounds so commoditized, and we wonder why to people we all sound alike. So I put together a program, Distinctive Dialogue, where I have many pages of much better ways to express the homes, properties, and so forth, and so on as well. And if somebody emails me, I'll get that sent out to them.
I put your email up there. One last question before we go, Allan.
Yeah.
It's a good question by Ryan Lally. What keeps Allan awake at night as an executive, decades of leadership experience in the industry? What is the biggest concern for the next generation of real estate professionals?
Well, I don't want to sound flippant because I know the question's like metaphorical. What keeps me up at night? Nothing keeps me up at night because when I sleep, I'm a sound sleeper. Not that anybody. Okay?
There you go, Ryan.
Unfortunately, I never wake up to have to go through the night. So I'm happy for that. So I'm going to take that selfish moment to personally celebrate that fact. But what is a deep concern, and I'll answer that metaphorically, what would keep me up at night, but it has me thinking night and day about this, is that I'd hate to see our industry of the nicest people, the most community-centric people. It always kills me when people say you can't trust a realtor, because our industry will honor each other's referrals, go to closing tables all around the country, dispatch checks to people we've never known, because we are so impeccably honest. I believe there's no more honest profession with better people than people who come into real estate. By virtue of the fact that we have such epic, important work of helping buyers, sellers, individuals, families resolve their lifestyle needs, which is at the center of their quality of life. The fact that we're in the environment with that high importance and high privilege, I think has brought out the best angels of everybody, for the most part, in our industry. Now, it's tough when we have an instant gratification, transaction to transaction driven industry, for some people at times not to be as consumer centric as there be. But I just hate to see all the outside people thinking that they're going to come in and try to take over elements of what real estate professionals do. That we're not just compensated on the transaction, we're compensated because 365 days a year, all of us are in this business. When you're on vacation, you're thinking about this.
Yeah.
You're missing soccer games. Families have split over this, okay? Realtors, on the whole, are underpaid in terms of how much it takes. This is an easy business to get into. There's no harder business to be very successful at. We have unbelievable winners, entrepreneurs, great people, great communicators, humanists, and I would hate to see, as I come more to the twilight of my career, I would hate to see this opportunity that anybody from any background, any educational level come in here because of their industriousness, their humanity. I'd hate to see some role of technology come in here and disrupt that simply because we didn't do a better job of communicating our value, simply because we didn't do a better job of educating a person. We're not just here when you're ready to buy or sell a home. We want to help you throughout your entire life like that. So that's my greatest concern, because I hate to see I'd hate to see that happen. And I think that great companies like Keller Williams, like Remax, like Coldwell Banker, like Century 21, like Better Homes and Gardens, like Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, like Real Living, companies that really promote full-time, highly professional realtors backed by resources, education, training, a sense of not only ethics but ethos. I think there's going to be an epic battle moving forward by people coming in trying to streamline transactions, making them more efficient, stripping out some value, and realtors going in doing a better job of expressing their value. The other thing that we need to do is this. Everybody can market a home right now. We have to do a better job of marketing properties. For example, if somebody were to say to most of you realtors on the call, well, how are you different? Don't use that as an opportunity to talk about yourself. Say this, Tristan, rather than focusing on how I'm different, I'd rather focus on how we make your property different. You see, I don't compete against other agents here in Westlake Village, but your home competes against other homes. I actually cooperate with all the other agents, but your home doesn't cooperate, it competes. But not only do homes in Westlake Village compete, Westlake Village competes with Santa Monica, with Agora Hills, with Calabasas. And see, Mayor Bloomberg was on Meet the Press several years ago when he was asked, what's the greatest threat to the future of New York? He said, the greatest threat to the future of New York is London. But see, we have to understand, we have been obsessed with how we're different. We have to be more obsessed with how our homes and towns have to be viewed as differently. Right now, in parts of the country, there's a massive challenge going on to preserve values in suburbs. There's books out there, for example, The Death of Suburbs. People in Connecticut, for example, are leaving in droves because they want to be in transportation-friendly, pedestrian-friendly. Okay, that's why areas around the exurban areas in the inner cities are so much more thriving. Well, a lot of residential real estate and the companies we know have made major commitments of suburbs and towns, and the value there is going to be under attack. So we have to use our marketing abilities to do a better job of reminding people of the value of every market you serve. Because at the end of the day, if people went to anybody in your respective market and said, which agent does the best job of marketing the value of this town or this county, you want it to be you. And so that's what we have to take. That's where we can take differentiation marketing to higher levels, because it's increasingly more difficult to differentiate yourself on the marketing, short of, well, I'm a better negotiator, I'm a better stager, I get better results, and so forth and so on. We have to expand that which we market, that meaning the lifestyle. And one thing that I've done with Real Living, for example, Tristan, I've created the luxury lifestyle division. Why did I do that? It goes back to segmentation and desegmentation. The industry has been too esoteric and too elite when it comes to luxury. There's people in $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 homes all over the United States on a half an acre with a swimming pool that to them they're living a luxury lifestyle, but we have had a dismissive assessment of what constitutes luxury. We have to expand lifestyle into luxury. All of these other divisions, it's unique homes, special homes, homes of distinction, preferred properties, premier properties. We have to go from property to lifestyle, and because Real Living is the quintessential lifestyle brand, I've just introduced the Real Living luxury lifestyle because it comports to our brand, and that wouldn't comport to other people here, but you've got to look at other ways to show that you understand that there's millions of homeowners who they believe they're very proud and they think they're living a luxury lifestyle, but it doesn't meet the standards of some of these uppity programs in terms of. And the other thing is that we have to change this. We've spent the last 100 years trying to train agents how to convince homeowners that their homes aren't as nice as they think. Okay?
Yeah.
And we have to do the reverse. And it has nothing to do with the price you put on.
You know, I don't interview a lot of people where I don't have a lot to say, but you you said so much and you were right on point. I really didn't have anything else to add, Allan. And everybody,
now?
Everybody's saying that. First, I'll give you some comments of what people are saying here. Do you guys have any more room at LCA Live to bring Allan to? That's number one.
When is
Can we-
that, by the way?
That was Anant from Chicago.
No, but when is that? When is LCA Live?
LCA Live is June 18th and 19th in Coronado. And then another person said, why don't we just do the marketing presentation right now? We'll just sit another hour through it. I wish I could.
I'll come back.
Dude, you're getting so much love. People love you. You were just saying the things that a lot of us want to say or have concerns about in our industry, and nobody really expresses them the way that you've done. So two things. Number one, I just texted you and Jeff Fitzer. He's our podcast guy.
Mm-hmm.
We want you on our podcast. And then number two, I'd love to interview you again in the next 3-4 weeks and just go fully in on the marketing.
Yeah, Jeff, it'd be my pleasure and privilege.
All right, man. I love it. And once again, thank you so much, Allan.
No, thank you, and God bless everybody in your network. I really respect so much people that want to go beyond what is just provided within the industry and expand it into the lab coat agents, that you really go to scholarship and research, brainstorming, elevation, and it's a great tribute to you, Tristan, and your partner, that what you have done is something for the ages. It's really remarkable.
I appreciate that, dude. Well, it's people like you that want to give back that make this all better. So
thank you for that. I do. I thank you.
Have a great weekend, buddy.
Okay, thanks. All the
Thanks,
best.
man.